Rasheeda thought she had seen it all with Kirk Frost. The lies, the infidelity, the late-night calls he couldn't explain, each one had tested her strength. But nothing could have prepared her for what came next. It started with a whisper online. A fan account on Instagram posted a story claiming that Kirk had been making secret child support payments to a woman outside the public eye. At first, it seemed like another baseless rumor. But within hours, screenshots began, statements, text messages, even receipts with Kirk's name, date, and a description that read child maintenance. The internet caught fire. Blogs ran with it, and by nightfall, the story had reached Rasheeda's phone. She stared at the screenshots, her hands trembling, her heart pounding so loud she could barely hear her own thoughts. In the middle of filming for her boutique's new promo, her phone kept buzzing, call after call. Messages from producers, castmates, even fans demanding answers. Rasheeda locked herself in her office, replaying every moment of the past year, every time Kirk brushed off a payment alert. Every vague excuse about business expenses. It all suddenly made sense. Not again, she whispered to herself, sinking into the chair. But this wasn't just another affair scandal. This time, there was a child. And this time, there were receipts. By morning, the alleged baby mama had come forward. She wasn't shy, she wasn't scared, she was bold. Her name was Tamika, a young woman from Atlanta who posted a now-viral video saying, "I'm not here to break no home. I just want him to do right by his child." The clip spread faster than wildfire. Within minutes, Rasheeda's name was trending across every platform. Fans were torn between disbelief and outrage. Some defended her, calling her a queen for her strength, while others demanded to know why she kept standing by Kirk after everything he had done. Meanwhile, Kirk was silent. Not a word, not a post. Just a cryptic story of him driving alone late at night, the caption reading, "Sometimes silence says it all." But for Rasheeda, silence wasn't enough. She confronted him behind closed doors, cameras rolling, emotions raw. "Tell me right now, Kirk," she said, voice shaking. "Do you have another child? Are you sending money behind my back?" The room went still. Kirk looked down, hesitating, his jaw tightening. And before he could answer, a producer's phone buzzed with another notification. Tamika had just dropped more receipts, texts, transfers, even voice notes that sounded unmistakably like Kirk. Fans were shocked. The family was left divided. And Rasheeda's world, once again, was on the brink of collapse. The cameras caught her walking out of the room, whispering, under her breath, "I can't do this again." What followed would become one of the most explosive moments in love and hip-hop history, a storm of betrayal, heartbreak, and the question that no one could stop asking, what else has Kirk been hiding? The house was too quiet for a morning like this. Rasheeda had barely slept. The night before, she had watched the video of Tamika again and again, trying to find any sign of manipulation or deceit. But the woman's tone was steady, almost calm, like someone who had nothing left to lose. Kirk was asleep in the guest room, or at least pretending to be. Rasheeda sat at the edge of the bed, scrolling through the endless flood of comments. Fans were torn, blogs were exploding, and every influencer with a ring light was suddenly an expert on her marriage. One comment caught her eye. "Rasheeda deserves better, but she'll never leave." That one hit harder than she wanted to admit. By noon, the producers had already called. They wanted to capture the fallout, the confrontation, the tears. "This is the moment everyone's been waiting for," one of them said over the phone, unaware that her silence wasn't agreement but exhaustion. Rasheeda didn't care about ratings. She cared about truth. She wanted to look Kirk in the eye and hear him say it wasn't true. But the problem was deep down she already knew it was. The cameras arrived. Lights flickered on, crew members whispered, and Kirk finally emerged, wearing a plain black hoodie and sweatpants. Looking like a man carrying the weight of his own lies. He didn't look at her. He just sat across the living room, hands folded, eyes fixed on the floor. Rasheeda crossed her arms, voice trembling but controlled. "So, Kirk, are you gonna tell me what's going on?" He didn't answer. Only the hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. "Because if I gotta hear it from the internet, then maybe I don't even need to hear it from you." He sighed, rubbed his forehead, and finally spoke. "It's not what it looks like." Rasheeda laughed bitterly. "That's exactly what you said the last time, and the time before that. And now you expect me to believe you again." Kirk tried to explain, said it was a misunderstanding, that the money wasn't for child support, that it was for business reasons. But every excuse felt weaker than the last. Rasheeda picked up her phone, scrolling to one of the receipts Tamika had posted. "Business reasons," she said, turning the screen toward him. "Because this one says childcare payment." "Explain that." The look on Kirk's face said everything. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Rasheeda stood up, pacing the room. "You know what hurts the most?" she said. "It's not even that you might have another child. It's that you think I'm dumb enough to not notice the pattern. You disappear, rumors start, and then you come back like nothing happened." Kirk looked up, voice low. "You're making it sound worse than it is." "Then tell me what it is, Kirk," she shouted. "Tell me who that woman is and why she got your name on her receipts." The tension was so thick the crew didn't dare breathe. Kirk finally muttered, "It's complicated." Rasheeda froze. "Complicated," she repeated softly. "That's your answer." Kirk looked cornered, his defenses crumbling. "I was helping her out. She fell on hard times. It wasn't supposed to look like this." Rasheeda stared at him, her expression a mix of disbelief and heartbreak. "You've said those exact words before," she said quietly. "Only difference is, last time, there wasn't a baby involved." Suddenly, her phone buzzed again, a notification. Another video. This time, Tamika was on Instagram Live. Rasheeda clicked it without hesitation. The woman was crying, holding a small boy in her arms. "I didn't want to do this," Tamika said to her viewers, "but since everyone keeps calling me a liar, here's the truth. Kirk knows about his son. He's been supporting us since last year. I have proof." She held up a printed message, thread texts from a number labeled K. The messages were clear, unmistakable. One of them read, "I'll send the money Friday. Keep everything low-key." The room went silent. Even Kirk stopped breathing for a moment. Rasheeda's face went pale as she turned toward him. "So you've been lying to me for a year?" Kirk stood, shaking his head. "It wasn't like that. I was trying to protect you." Rasheeda's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was sharp. "Protect me from what, Kirk? From the truth? Or from the embarrassment of knowing my husband's still out here making the same mistakes?" He tried to reach for her, but she stepped back. "Don't," she said firmly. "You always do this. You mess up, cry a little, promise to change, and then go right back to doing whatever you want. I've stood by you when nobody else would. I defended you when the world laughed at me, and this is what I get." Kirk's eyes watered. "I made a mistake." "No," she replied. "You made a choice." As the confrontation escalated, the crew exchanged uneasy glances. One of the producers whispered, "Keep rolling." This was television gold. But for Rasheeda, it was her life unraveling in real time. She wiped her tears and looked straight into the camera. "This is my reality," she said. "And I'm done pretending everything's okay." The next day, Atlanta woke up to chaos. Every gossip outlet was dissecting the footage. Fans were posting side-by-side comparisons of Tamika's child and Kirk's old photos. The resemblance was undeniable. Twitter exploded with hashtags, #KirkExposed, #JusticeForRasheeda, #BabyMamaGate. Even celebrities began chiming in. Some offering support, others mocking the situation. Rasheeda stayed silent. She refused interviews, avoided social media, and poured herself into work, pretending not to see her world collapsing online. But the silence didn't last long. Kirk, desperate to control the narrative, agreed to sit down for a televised interview. He claimed the payments were taken out of context, that he was doing the right thing as a man. But viewers weren't buying it. The interviewer pressed him, "So you're denying that's your child?" Kirk hesitated, fidgeting with his hands. "I'm not saying that," he replied slowly. "I'm saying things got complicated." It was the closest thing to an admission he'd ever given, and the internet pounced. Clips from the interview went viral within hours. Rasheeda watched the segment from her living room, her best friend Kendra by her side. "Girl," Kendra said softly, "he basically just told the whole world it's true." Rasheeda didn't respond. Her face was blank, her heart heavy. "I thought we were past this," she whispered. "After everything, I really thought we were solid." Kendra hugged her gently. "Sometimes people don't change, no matter how much you love them." But then, something unexpected happened. Tamika posted a cryptic story. "You think you know everything, but there's more to the story." That single sentence set off another wave of speculation. Fans began theorizing that someone else might be involved, that maybe Kirk wasn't the only one keeping secrets. Rumors swirled that another man had been supporting Tamika before Kirk stepped in, and just when things couldn't get messier. A new video surfaced, a clip of Kirk arguing with an unknown man in a parking lot, shouting, You better stay out of this. By evening, that clip was everywhere. Blogs called it the fight that changes everything. Fans demanded answers. Rasheeda, watching from home, felt her stomach twist. She knew that parking lot it was right behind their old studio. What else is he hiding? She muttered under her breath. Her phone rang again. It was the producers, asking if she'd film another sit-down with Kirk to clear the air. She hesitated for a long moment, then finally said, "Fine, but this time, I want the truth." And as the crew prepared to set up, Rasheeda sat quietly, knowing this next confrontation would be the one that either ended her marriage or exposed something even deeper. The next day arrived heavy with tension. Gray clouds hung over Atlanta as if even the sky was holding its breath for what was about to unfold. Inside the Frost household, cameras were already rolling, capturing every uneasy glance and every faint sigh. Kirk sat on the couch, staring at the floor like a man waiting for a sentence he already knew was coming. Rasheeda entered quietly, her expression unreadable. She wore no makeup this time. No glamour, just raw emotion and exhaustion. The crew could feel the weight in the room. No one spoke until she finally did. "You said you wanted to clear the air," she said slowly. "So clear it." Kirk took a deep breath. "Look, I messed up. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Rasheeda crossed her arms. "Define far." Kirk hesitated, searching for words that could soften the blow. "I was helping Tamika because she said she needed it. She told me she was struggling, that she didn't have anyone else. I sent money to make sure her kid was taken care of." Rasheeda's voice cracked, though she tried to hold it steady. "And you didn't think I deserved to know?" Kirk looked up, guilt written across his face. "I thought if I told you, you'd think it was something more." "And was it something more?" Her question sliced through the room. Kirk looked away. "No," he said quickly, but the pause before it said otherwise. Rasheeda took a deep breath, tears gathering in her eyes. "You can lie to the world, Kirk, but don't lie to me. I've lived through your lies. I can hear them in your tone before you even finish the sentence." Kirk leaned forward, desperate now. "I swear, I didn't cheat this time." Rasheeda shook her head slowly. "You might not have touched her, but you betrayed me all the same." The camera zoomed in on her face, capturing every tremble in her lips, every flicker of heartbreak in her eyes. This was television history being made, pain so real it didn't need a script. Kirk rubbed his temples, his voice breaking. "I was trying to fix things before they got out of control." Rasheeda almost laughed at that. Out of control. "Kirk, it's been out of control since the day you started lying. And now you're dragging our name through the mud again." Meanwhile, social media was on fire. Fans were live tweeting the confrontation, even though the episode hadn't aired yet. Crew members had leaked hints to gossip blogs, describing the scene as the most emotional moment in franchise history. Hashtags like #TeamRasheeda and #KirkExposed trended for hours. The streets of Atlanta buzzed with speculation, and paparazzi camped outside the Frost home hoping for a glimpse of drama. As the confrontation continued, Kirk finally said something that froze everyone. "What if I told you Tamika wasn't telling the whole truth?" Rasheeda frowned. "What do you mean?" Kirk looked around the room, lowering his voice. "There's another person involved. Someone's been playing both sides." Rasheeda's brows furrowed. "Who?" Kirk hesitated. "I can't say yet." Before anyone could press further, Rasheeda's phone buzzed. Another video. She tapped it open, and the crew gasped. It was Tamika again, but this time, she wasn't crying. She was angry. "You wanna act like you didn't know, Kirk?" She shouted into the camera. "You think I'm just gonna let you ruin my name? Nah. Tell them about the messages. Tell them about the night at the studio." Rasheeda froze. "What night?" Kirk's face drained of color. "She's twisting it." He stammered. "Don't do this." "What night, Kirk?" She repeated, louder this time. The tension crackled through the room. Kirk swallowed hard, his voice barely audible. "It was a party, last summer. She showed up. I didn't invite her." Rasheeda's expression hardened. "And what happened?" Kirk looked down. Nothing happened. But the internet didn't believe that. By evening, Tamika had released screenshots of what appeared to be messages between her and Kirk from that same night. "You good? Don't tell nobody you hear." And then another. "You look good tonight. Don't make me regret this." The messages spread like wildfire, and suddenly Kirk's story unraveled even further. Bloggers dissected every timestamp, every emoji, every capital letter. Some even claimed to have audio from the night, though no one could verify it. Rasheeda sat in silence as the world tore apart her marriage. Her mother called, furious. "You need to leave that man once and for all," she said. "How many times he gotta humiliate you before you see what he is?" Rasheeda wiped her tears. "Mama, I just need time to think." But her mother didn't let up. "You've been thinking for 10 years? Baby, maybe it's time to act." The following week, Kirk showed up unannounced at Rasheeda's boutique. Cameras caught the moment he walked in, holding a single rose like it could undo a year's worth of damage. Rasheeda looked up from the counter, unimpressed. "Really?" she said. "You think flowers are gonna fix this?" Kirk placed the rose down gently. "I came to talk, not to fight." "Good," she said. "Because I'm done fighting for someone who won't fight for me." Customers inside the store pretended to browse but were clearly eavesdropping. Kirk lowered his voice. "I took a DNA test." Rasheeda's head snapped up. "What?" Kirk nodded slowly. "I had to know the truth. I got the results this morning." Rasheeda's heart raced. "And?" Kirk hesitated, then whispered, "He's not mine." The words hung in the air. Rasheeda blinked, unsure if she'd heard right. "What do you mean he's not yours?" Kirk pulled out his phone, showing her the email. The test came back negative. "The kid's not mine." Shaw. For a moment, time stopped. Rasheeda felt a rush of relief, confusion, and disbelief all at once. "So she lied." Kirk nodded. "She played us both." But even as he said it, something about the timing felt off. Rasheeda narrowed her eyes. "When did you take this test?" Kirk looked away. "A few weeks ago." "And you didn't tell me," she said sharply. "You let me go through hell while you already knew." Kirk's silence said it all. The relief in the room vanished, replaced by fury. "You really don't get it," Rasheeda said, her voice trembling. "It's not just about the baby. It's about the lies. Always the lies." The cameras kept rolling as Kirk tried to apologize, but Rasheeda walked out, slamming the boutique door behind her. Outside, the paparazzi swarmed, shouting questions. "Rasheeda, is it over? Are you leaving him?" She kept walking, head high, but tears burned in her eyes. That night, she posted a cryptic message on her Instagram story. "Sometimes peace means walking away, even from what you love." Fans flooded her comments with support, calling her an inspiration, a survivor. But inside, she felt empty. The betrayal still echoed, even if the child wasn't his. And somewhere in Atlanta, Tamika was online again, this time hinting that she had one more thing to reveal. And as midnight struck, the city braced itself for another shock that would drag everyone back into the chaos they thought had ended. Midnight turned into morning, and the Frost household felt like a ghost town. Rasheeda hadn't spoken to Kirk since the boutique confrontation, and the silence between them was heavier than any argument. Outside, cameras waited for a reaction, but inside, she moved quietly from room to room, as if trying to remember what peace felt like before everything fell apart again. Her phone sat face down on the table, buzzing every few minutes with messages she refused to read. But when it rang for the 5th time, she finally looked. It wasn't a fan or a producer. Was Tamika? The call froze her. Curiosity battled anger, but eventually she answered, her tone cold. "What?" Curiosity battled anger, but eventually she answered, her tone cold. "What do you want?" There was a pause. Then Tamika's voice came through, softer than Rasheeda expected. "I just wanted to tell you the truth before things get worse." Rasheeda clenched her jaw. "Worse? You already blew up my marriage." Tamika sighed. "You think I wanted this? You think I enjoy being dragged online, called a liar, a home? This wasn't how it was supposed to go." Rasheeda's voice sharpened. "Then what was it supposed to be?" "He promised me," Tamika said quietly. "He promised he'd take care of us. Not because the kid was his, but because he thought he was. He said he didn't want to repeat the same mistakes from before. He said if he ever messed up again, he'd at least do the right thing." Rasheeda's breath caught. For a moment, the rage she'd been carrying cracked, and confusion slipped through. "So you're saying he didn't know?" Tamika's voice wavered. "I didn't know either. Not at first. The timeline was messy. When I found out the truth, I panicked. I didn't mean to drag his name or yours, but when the story leaked, I had to defend myself." Rasheeda was silent for a long time. "So who's the father then?" she finally asked. Tamika hesitated. "That's what I wanted to tell you," she said. "The man in that parking lot video, the one Kirk was yelling at, that's the real father." Rasheeda froze. "What?" Tamika took a shaky breath. "His name's Marcus. He works in music too. We were on and off. And when I told him about the baby, he disappeared. Kirk stepped in when Marcus wouldn't. But Marcus came back after everything went public. He didn't want to be exposed, so he started feeding stories to blogs. He wanted Kirk to take the blame." Rasheeda's heart pounded. "You're saying Marcus set this up?" Tamika's voice cracked. "Yes. He leaked the screenshots, the receipts, everything. He knew it would explode because people love to see y'all fall apart." Rasheeda pressed her hand to her forehead, stunned. "Why are you telling me this now?" Tamika whispered. "Because I can't carry it anymore. And I'm tired of being the villain." After hanging up, Rasheeda sat in silence. Her emotions were tangled: anger, Pity, relief, exhaustion. She wanted to believe Tamika, but her trust in anyone connected to Kirk was long gone. Still, something about her tone felt different this time. Honest, broken. She opened her laptop and searched the man's name. Within minutes, she found him: Marcus Devereaux, a low-level producer who'd once worked under Kirk's label years ago. And just like Tamika said, he'd gone quiet online ever since the scandal broke. No posts, no comments, nothing. The next day, Rasheeda decided to confront Kirk again. But this time, the conversation had a different energy. She walked into the studio where he was recording, ignoring the cameras waiting outside. Kirk looked up, surprised. "Shaw, you're here." "Don't call me that," she said sharply. "We need to talk." He nodded, nervous. "About what?" "About Marcus." His face went pale. "You talked to Tamika?" "Yeah," she said, folding her arms. "She told me everything. About the payments, about how you thought the baby might be yours, and about how Marcus played you both." Kirk exhaled heavily. "I was gonna tell you." "When?" she shot back. "After the next scandal." Kirk lowered his eyes. "I didn't have proof. And I knew you wouldn't believe me without it." Rasheeda shook her head. "You should have trusted me enough to tell me anyway. We can survive anything together if you stop lying to me." Kirk looked at her, tears brimming in his eyes. "I was scared," he admitted. "After everything I put you through before. I thought if you heard another story about another woman, you'd walk out for good." Rasheeda's voice softened slightly. "I've walked out 100 times in my mind, Kirk. But every time, you pull me back with promises that never last." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The studio felt heavier than usual, like the walls themselves were listening. Then Kirk said quietly, "Tamika wasn't lying about Marcus. I've been digging to. I found out he sold those screenshots to a gossip site for $5,000. That's how the story blew up." Rasheeda blinked, stunned. "So this was a setup?" Kirk nodded. "Yeah. He wanted revenge because I dropped him from the label years ago. Said I stole his career. This was his payback." Rasheeda leaned back, letting the truth sink in. Everything, the chaos, the tears, the public humiliation, had been someone else's game. "So you let me suffer for weeks while you knew this?" Kirk's voice broke. "I didn't know for sure until yesterday. I was waiting for confirmation." "And you didn't think to tell me when you found out?" Rasheeda snapped. "After everything I went through." Kirk looked helpless. "I wanted to fix it first, to make it right before bringing it to you." She shook her head, her voice low. "You don't get it, Kirk. I don't need you to fix things. I need you to be honest, even when it's ugly. I can handle pain. I can't handle lies." He nodded slowly, his eyes full of remorse. "You're right. And I'll do whatever it takes to make it right this time." As they spoke, the producers outside got word of what was happening and rushed in, cameras rolling again. Rasheeda shot them a look but didn't stop them. Maybe, she thought, the world needed to see this tootha exhaustion behind the glamour, the truth behind the gossip. Kirk looked at her, voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Shaw. I really am." She sighed. "Sorry doesn't undo the damage, but maybe it's a start." Later that night, footage of the confrontation leaked online again, but this time the tone shifted. Fans flooded social media with messages of support. Many said they could see the pain in Rasheeda's eyes, but also the strength in her calm. Others began to turn their anger toward Marcus, demanding answers. Within hours, he deactivated all his accounts. Blogs ran headlines like "The Real Villain Exposed" and "Marcus Devereaux Caught in the Crossfire." But the peace was short. Just as Rasheeda began to feel the smallest sense of relief, a new bomb dropped. An anonymous account posted unseen footage from months ago. Kirk and Tamika together at a lounge, laughing, her hand on his arm. The caption read, "You can delete the lies, but the camera never forgets." And once again, the story reignited. Fans who had just begun forgiving Kirk turned on him again. The Frost family, already fractured, now faced another wave of chaos. Rasheeda stared at the clip, numb. "It never ends," she whispered. Kirk tried to explain. "It was before everything. I didn't even know she was pregnant then." But the damage was done. The comment sections were ruthless. Proof he never changed. She needs to leave him for real this time. Every season, it's the same story. Rasheeda turned off her phone, stood up from the couch, and walked outside into the cool Atlanta night. The city lights blurred in her vision, her heart pounding from the weight of a truth that refused to stay buried. And as she looked out over the skyline, one thought consumed her: maybe this time, she really was done for good. The night had a strange stillness after that. Nothing moved, not even the wind that had been whispering for hours. Everything seemed to be waiting for something, a voice, a sound, anything to remind the world it was still breathing. But all that came was silence, thick and cold. pressing against every surface like invisible fog. In that quiet, the truth began to settle, the kind of truth that doesn't shout, doesn't explain, doesn't ask for belief. It simply is. And once it arrives, it never leaves. They say moments like these test the mind, but it was more than that. It wasn't a test. It was an awakening. The kind that doesn't give you the luxury of returning to who you were before. Because once you've seen what hides beneath peace, once you've felt the stillness that follows revelation, you cannot unknow it. You carry it inside you like a pulse that no one else can hear. He walked back through the dim corridor, each step echoing faintly, like memory trying to repeat itself. The walls seemed narrower now, the air heavier. Something had changed. He couldn't say what it was, only that it had shifted everything. Maybe it was the realization that the line between truth and illusion wasn't just thin, it was alive. It moved, it adapted, it watched whoever tried to cross it, and he had crossed it. There was no undoing that. He reached the window and looked out into the emptiness where the horizon used to be. Nothing but a vast shadow spread before him. He thought of time, how it stretches and folds. How moments disappear not because they end but because they overlap with others. Maybe that was what had happened here. Maybe something ancient had overlapped with. Maybe that was what had happened here. Maybe something ancient had overlapped with the present, folding itself so quietly that no one noticed until now. The thought of turning back crossed his mind, but the door he'd entered through was no longer visible. Not gone, just elsewhere. The space seemed to have rearranged itself, as though reality had become self-conscious and decided to rewrite its geometry. His pulse steadied. Fear had no use here anymore. There was only awareness, pure, raw awareness, the kind that strips language from thought. His breath slowed, his vision sharpened. It wasn't just a corridor anymore, it was a threshold. Something wanted to be known. He whispered into the quiet, "I'm listening." The silence responded, not with sound but with sensation. A hum, faint and electric, vibrating through the floor. It grew stronger, almost melodic, until it resonated in his chest like a second heartbeat. It was then he realized that what he thought was outside was actually inside. The shadows weren't following him. They were forming from him. Every fear, every doubt, every quiet moment of dishonesty, it had become shape, color, texture. They surrounded him, not as punishment but as recognition. They were parts of him he had left unnamed for too long. The hum deepened. His reflection appeared on the windowpane, but it wasn't still. It moved with delayed precision, lagging behind him by half a breath. When he lifted his hand, the reflection hesitated, then caught up, almost reluctantly. He smiled without knowing why. Maybe it was the first sign of understanding. Truth, he thought, isn't something you discover. It's something that remembers you. As the hum faded, the silence returned, but this time it wasn't empty. It was full of something indescribable, like light without brightness. He stepped forward, and the glass before him rippled. For a moment, he saw through it, not to the world beyond, but to a memory buried beneath thought. A room, a face, a single word whispered long ago, "Return." He blinked, and it was gone. The hum flickered once more, like a pulse checking itself. He closed his eyes and felt time slow. He wasn't sure whether he was still standing or floating, still breathing or dissolving, but it didn't matter. The distinction had stopped meaning anything. He remembered what it felt like to believe in beginnings and endings, to think that life moved in a straight line. But here, in this strange stillness, he understood it differently. Existence wasn't aligned, was a loop that folded upon itself endlessly, and every loop was aware of every other. To move through time was not to progress but to remember. And suddenly, memory wasn't his anymore. It was collective, ancestral, universal. He felt the echo of every life that had ever wondered why the silence grows louder the deeper one listens. Then came a whisper, barely audible, yet undeniably there. "You are the echo." His eyes opened, and everything had changed again. The window no longer reflected him but what seemed like infinite corridors stretching in every direction, each lined with shadows of himself at different moments, some younger, some older, all watching. None spoke, yet he could feel their thoughts, their questions, their regrets. Each one seemed to be waiting for something for him to realize. But realize what? The hum returned, softer now, guiding him forward. As he walked, the corridors began to blur, merging like wet ink. The boundaries dissolved until there was no clear separation between self and reflection, between thought and reality. Everything was awareness watching itself unfold. And then it hit him, the understanding so deep it almost felt like pain. There is no outside observer. Everything that exists is part of the same gaze, the same consciousness. endlessly reflecting and refracting itself through countless forms. Every being, every object, every breath is the same infinite awareness, exploring its own possibilities. For a brief moment, he felt weightless, like truth itself had exhaled through him. The shadows vanished, the walls melted into light, and there was only one thing left: the hum. It filled everything, pulsing softly, infinitely patient. And within that hum, he felt the quiet presence of the same voice that had whispered before. It didn't speak in words this time. It spoke through understanding. He realized he was standing at the exact place where everything begins, not a location, but a recognition. The hum grew faint, dissolving into a warmth that felt eternal. He looked ahead and whispered, almost reverently, "I remember now." The silence answered with light. The light did not blind him, it unfolded, layer by layer, revealing patterns that felt both ancient and newborn. There were no walls anymore, no corridors, only a vast openness that pulsed like a living heartbeat. Colors moved without form, and sound had texture. Each vibration seemed to carry memory, theirs, all of it intertwined. He could not tell whether he was moving through it or it was moving through him. The boundaries between inside and outside had long dissolved. And yet, there was still something distinctly human within him, a fragile thread of awareness, holding shape against the immensity. He felt the echo of his own heartbeat matching the rhythm of the vast hum, until it became difficult to tell which was his. Every beat was a question answered by the next. He wondered how long he had been here, but time no longer had weight. It didn't pass, it resonated. Each moment seemed to contain every other, stretching endlessly in both directions. Memory became circular, returning again and again, always slightly changed. He saw moments of his past flicker through the light, faces, laughter, silence. Regretted, each dissolved into something purer, stripped of meaning, existing only as energy. He began to understand that the light wasn't showing him what was or is. It was showing him possibility. Everything he had ever thought or felt, every choice made or ignored, existed simultaneously, layered within this luminous field. Reality wasn't fixed, it was a song constantly rewriting itself depending on how deeply one listened. The hum intensified, vibrating through his bones until he felt it in his teeth, his breath, his thoughts. And beneath it, another frequency emerged, slower, heavier rhythm. It felt like a call, not from elsewhere, but from beneath existence itself. The voice that rose from it was not separate. It came from within the hum, within him. "You have always been here," it said, though the words weren't words at all. They were recognition, carried through sensation. You walked toward understanding, as if it were distance, but you were only walking inward. The labyrinth was never around you, it was you. He felt his chest tighten. The idea was terrifying, but also beautiful. To realize that every confusion, every shadow, every lost moment was not an obstacle, but an expression of the same searching intelligence. He thought of the faces he had seen, the reflections, the echoes. All were versions of him attempting to find the center that did not exist. For a moment, he felt a pull, as if being drawn deeper into himself, where thought dissolved into silence, and silence revealed meaning. Then the hum shifted again, and he saw something impossible. Through the light, through the folds of perception, he glimpsed the world he had left behind, or what looked like it. Streets, people, cities, moving in slow rhythm. But they were different. They glowed faintly, as if made of the same material as the light. And he understood they were. Everything that existed was made of the same awareness, only condensed into form. Every human breath, every drop of rain, every thought was a vibration of the same infinite pulse. He whispered, "So nothing is separate." The hum responded with warmth that filled his body. "Nothing has ever been separate. Separation was the dream you needed to wake from." He closed his eyes and felt tears form, though they were not from sorrow. It was recognition, the kind that reshapes everything. The kind that makes you understand why pain exists, to remind you that love does too. He thought of all the times he had felt alone, all the times he had tried to name meaning, all the moments he had feared being forgotten, and in that light, he saw that nothing was ever forgotten. Every thought, every heartbeat, every quiet moment of longing had been recorded in the rhythm of existence. He stepped forward again, though he no longer knew what forward meant. There was no direction here, only intention, and with each step, the light grew softer, more intimate, as if it were adjusting to his breath. He realized that the universe was listening to him in real time, responding not to his words, but to his state of being. Every shift in emotion, every flicker of thought shaped the landscape around him. This was creation, not as an act, but as a relationship. The hum deepened once more, and suddenly, the light folded. A single image emerged. A child sitting by a window, staring at the rain. It was him. The boy looked up, and their eyes met across time. For a brief, impossible moment, the man and the child shared the same awareness, both realizing they were each other. No past, no future, just one endless now. The child smiled faintly and whispered something he could not hear, but somehow understood. Remember how to see. Then the image dissolved, leaving only ripples of sound. His breath quickened. Seeing the child had stirred something old. Something almost forgotten, the quiet innocence that existed before questions began. He realized that awakening wasn't about discovering new truths. It was about remembering the simplicity that had always been there, beneath the noise of thought. The silence that followed was unlike any before it. It wasn't emptiness, it was fullness, so complete it demanded stillness. He felt his body disintegrate into awareness, every cell merging with light, every breath becoming rhythm. There was no more distinction between observer and observed. No more sense of self as a separate being. Only awareness, only recognition, only the hum. Then, from within that infinite quiet, something began to emerge again, something small, fragile, pulsing faintly. A heartbeat, not his, not separate either. It was the sound of the world returning, the sound of form rebuilding itself from formlessness. He opened his eyes and saw the faint outline of a new horizon forming, neither past nor future, but something beyond both. The hum whispered again, softer now, almost like a lullaby. You are the witness, and the dream. Remember that neither ends. He nodded slowly, the light fading to a warm golden haze. Everything around him began to regain shape, the air, the sound, the distance. But something inside him remained vast, untouched. He carried the hum with him now, beating softly beneath his heartbeat, reminding him that the truth does not arrive, it awakens. And once awakened, it never sleeps again. Rasheeda didn't sleep that night. The house was quiet, but her mind refused to rest. Every vibration of her phone made her stomach twist tighter. She scrolled through messages from fans, friends, even strangers, all tagging her in the chaos spreading online. The so-called baby mama Tamika had posted again. This time it wasn't just receipts, it was a full voice recording. The internet was eating it up. In the clip, Kirk's voice could be heard saying, "Keep everything low. I'll handle the payments. Nobody needs to know." The voice was unmistakable. And though Rasheeda wanted to believe it was edited, the tone, the pauses, the casual guilt, it all felt too familiar. She set the phone down, staring at the reflection of herself in the dark screen. Her voice cracked when she whispered, "Why does it always have to be me?" Morning brought no peace. Kirk was already downstairs pretending to make coffee like nothing had happened. The cameras were rolling again, but the tension between them was thick enough to silence even the crew. "We're not doing this today," she said, walking past him. "Oh, we're doing this?" Kirk shot back, trying to sound composed, but failing. "You think I'm just gonna sit here and let social media ruin me?" Rasheeda turned sharply. "Ruin you? You already did that yourself. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think the world wouldn't see what you've been hiding?" He slammed the mug on the counter, coffee spilling. "You don't even know the full story." "Then tell me, Kirk," she snapped. "Tell me why this woman's got bank statements with your name on it. Why she's showing messages about our child. Explain it like I'm stupid, 'cause that's how you make me look." The room fell into a heavy silence. Kirk rubbed his face, his voice lowering. "It's not what it looks like." She laughed bitterly. "It never is." Later that afternoon, production moved outside to the front porch. The network wanted to capture real reactions, and the director's voice could be heard whispering, "This might be the biggest moment of the season." Rasheeda sat quietly, holding her phone. The comments were endless, half the internet calling her strong, the other half calling her naive. She didn't care about the opinions, but each word stung anyway. She watched the clip of Tamika's interview again. Tamika looked calm, confident. "I'm not out here to embarrass anyone," she said to the camera, "but Kirk knows what he did. I've got messages, photos, and even the paperwork from the payments. I didn't make any of it up." Producers whispered among themselves, trying to decide whether to reach out to Tamika for an on-camera meeting. One of them approached Rasheeda, asking if she'd be open to it. "Open to what?" she asked flatly, being humiliated again. "You want me to sit across from her and watch her talk about how my husband's her baby's father?" The producer hesitated, but before he could answer, Kirk walked in, expression tight. "Let's do it," he said. Rasheeda turned to him in disbelief. "You want to meet her?" He nodded slowly. "If it means ending this circus." "Yeah." The meeting was set for the next evening, at a quiet restaurant rented out by the crew. Fans were already buzzing online. Rasheeda confronts the alleged baby mama became the top headline on gossip sites. Paparazzi were camped outside before they even arrived. Rasheeda wore sunglasses and silence. Kirk sat next to her, fidgeting with his phone, avoiding her gaze. Inside, Tamika waited, wearing a simple white dress, her phone placed neatly in front of her. The cameras rolled as Rasheeda walked in, and for a long moment, the two women just stared at each other. "So," Tamika began softly, "you wanted to see me." Rasheeda's voice was low but sharp. "No, he wanted this. I just want the truth." Kirk shifted uncomfortably. Tamika leaned forward, folding her hands. "Then you deserve it, and I'll give it to you." She pulled out a folder, printed screenshots, bank slips, text messages. Everything matched Kirk's name and number. The receipts were organized by date, each showing regular payments labeled as support. Rasheeda flipped through them, her expression unreadable. Then she came across a photo, a little girl, about 4 years old, smiling with dimples eerily like Kirk's. Her throat tightened. "Is this her?" Tamika nodded. "That's Maya." Kirk froze. His lips parted but no sound came. Rasheeda's voice trembled. "She looks like you." Kirk tried to speak. "Rasheeda, please, I didn't know how to stop." She interrupted. "Don't say you didn't know. That's the one thing you always know how to do, lie until it all blows up." The silence stretched. Cameras zoomed in on their faces, Rasheeda's anger barely contained. Tamika's sadness, heavy but steady. Kirk's guilt thick in the air. Finally, Tamika spoke. "I'm not here to fight you. I just wanted what was fair for my child. He said he'd take care of it quietly, but I didn't ask him to hide it." Rasheeda stared at her for a long time, then quietly said, "You didn't have to. He hides everything." She stood up, hands shaking, and walked out before anyone could stop her. Outside, flashes went off like thunder. Paparazzi yelled questions. "Rasheeda, do you believe her? Is Kirk the father?" She didn't answer. She just kept walking to the car, eyes straight ahead. Kirk followed, but she turned before getting in. "You know what hurts the most," she said quietly. "That I wasn't even surprised." Then she got in, slamming the door, leaving him standing under the glare of cameras that caught every inch of his shame. That night, the scene went viral within minutes. Fans flooded social media with divided opinions. Some blamed Kirk, others blamed the show for exploiting their pain. Hashtags like #PrayForRasheeda and #KirkExposed trended for days. But amid the noise, one thing was clear. This wasn't just a rumor anymore. The truth, or something close to it, had finally stepped into the light. And as much as Kirk wanted to control the narrative, the world was now watching the story write itself. But the twist no one saw coming was already in motion. Because while the world argued over who was right or wrong, someone else was about to come forward, someone with a story that would make everything they'd seen so far look tame. The real storm was only beginning. 2 days later, Atlanta felt smaller than ever. Every cafe, salon, and studio was buzzing with the same question: had Kirk really fathered another child? The footage from the restaurant had leaked in full, and it played on loop across gossip blogs and TV panels. Even people who had never watched Love and Hip Hop before were suddenly invested. Rasheeda stayed quiet, ignoring interviews and calls from the network. She locked herself in her office, scrolling through old photos of her and Kirk, back when they still smiled without forcing it. Her assistant knocked softly. "You've got someone here to see you." Rasheeda frowned. "Who?" She said her name's Jasmine. Rasheeda froze. That name hadn't left her in peace since the first scandal years ago. The woman from Kirk's past. The one he'd already had a child with. "Tell her to leave," she said. "It's important." Rasheeda sighed and stood up. Jasmine was standing in the lobby, dressed plainly, looking uneasy. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see," Jasmine said quietly. "You're right about that," Rasheeda replied. "So why are you here?" Jasmine hesitated. "Because I think there's something you don't know. And if I were you, I'd want to know it." Rasheeda folded her arms. "Go on." Jasmine pulled out her phone and showed a message thread. "Tamika reached out to me weeks ago. She wanted advice. She told me Kirk was making payments and that he promised to keep it quiet. But then she said she wasn't sure if the child was even his. She said she never got a DNA test." Rasheeda's expression shifted slightly. "So you're saying she might be lying?" "I'm saying," Jasmine replied carefully, "that Kirk might not be the only one she's been seeing." The air thickened with disbelief. Rasheeda took the phone, reading through the screenshots. Tamika's messages were filled with uncertainty, talks about another man named Dion, about not wanting to ruin Kirk's family, about trying to figure out who's who. It wasn't proof, but it was enough to make Rasheeda's chest ache in a new way. Anger, twisted with confusion. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. Jasmine shrugged. "Because I know what it feels like when everyone's watching and you don't know what to believe. I don't want to see you go through that again." Before Rasheeda could respond, Kirk walked in. He stopped short when he saw Jasmine. "What the hell is this?" "A conversation you should have had a long time ago," Jasmine shot back. "Don't start," Kirk warned. "You think I don't know what you're doing? Trying to stir it up again for the cameras?" Jasmine laughed bitterly. "Please, you already did that yourself." Rasheeda's voice cut through the tension. "Stop, both of you." She turned to Kirk. "Did you know about this?" That she wasn't even sure. Kirk hesitated. She told me there was a chance, but I didn't want to risk it being true. I thought keeping quiet was safer." "Safer for who?" Rasheeda asked. "For your image, or your peace of mind?" The argument grew sharper. The crew, sensing another scene, began setting up outside the door. Voices rose, emotions tangled. "You could have come to me," Rasheeda said, trembling. "After everything we went through. After the last time, you could have told me the truth." Kirk ran a hand through his hair. "I was trying to protect you." "You don't protect someone by lying to them," she snapped. Jasmine quietly slipped out, leaving the two alone with a silence that said more than words could. Later that evening, Tamika went live again. "People are trying to make it look like I'm lying," she said to her growing audience. "But I'm not here to play games. I've got nothing to hide." She held up what looked like a sealed DNA envelope. "Since everyone's got opinions, let's make it official. I'll take the test, and we'll let the results do the talking." Within an hour, #TAMIKADNA trended worldwide. The drama had officially left Atlanta and gone global. Kirk's team called an emergency meeting, urging him to stay off social media, but he couldn't resist. He posted a photo of himself in the studio with the caption, "Truth don't need no proof. It reveals itself." The post backfired instantly, drawing thousands of mocking comments. Rasheeda, meanwhile, met privately with her close friend, Carly Red. The cameras weren't supposed to be there, but the mics caught every word. "You think he's lying again?" Carly asked. Rasheeda sighed, her eyes tired. "I think Kirk's scared. And when he's scared, he lies. But this time, I don't even know if I want the truth. 'Cause either way, I lose." "You don't lose," Carly said. "You survive. You always do." Rasheeda gave a weak smile. "Yeah, but surviving gets exhausting." The DNA results were scheduled to be revealed live the next week, with both Kirk and Tamika invited. Rasheeda refused to attend, though the producers begged her. "I'm done being part of this circus," she said firmly. "If he's the father, I'll deal with it. If he's not, I'll deal with that too. Either way, I'm tired of cameras telling my story." But even as she said it, deep down, she knew she wasn't done not yet. The night before the big reveal, Kirk sat alone in his car outside the house. He recorded a voice note but never sent it. "If you ever see this," he whispered, "I just want you to know I didn't mean for it to go this far. I wanted peace. I wanted to fix things, but I keep breaking what I'm trying to save." He sat there for a long time, staring at the empty street, listening to the quiet hum of the city that no longer felt like home. Morning came heavy. The set was filled with tension. Journalists waiting outside, fans watching live streams. Tamika arrived first, her face calm but her hands trembling. Kirk came next, wearing sunglasses though the studio lights were dim. The host held up the envelope. "We have the results," she said dramatically. "And after all the speculation, the truth will finally come out." Kirk's jaw clenched. Tamika looked down. The room went silent. And as the paper unfolded, a hush fell over everyone. The host's eyes widened slightly. Then she looked up. "The DNA test shows that Kirk Frost is not the father." Gasps filled the studio. Tamika covered her face, whispering, "Oh my God." Kirk exhaled sharply, half in relief, half in disbelief. But the story didn't end there. As the noise swelled around them, a producer's phone buzzed with a new notification. Another woman, this time from Miami, had just posted online claiming she had a child by Kirk. And unlike Tamika, she had video proof. The chaos had only just begun. The house stood quiet now, though its silence was not peace. It was the kind that hums with tension, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for the next scream, the next confession, the next unraveling. Kirk sat in the kitchen with his head in his hands, the remnants of a meal untouched on the table. Across from him, Rasheeda's phone buzzed again, another message, another piece of a truth he didn't want to face. It wasn't just gossip now, it was screenshots, receipts, recordings. Every message revealed a layer of betrayal, a story built behind his back while he was busy holding the public image together. Outside, rain started again, soft and steady, tracing crooked paths down the windowpane. K. Michelle's voice drifted from the living room TV, an old interview playing where she had once said, "Loyalty should never make you blind." The words felt heavier now than when she'd first said them years ago. Kirk stood slowly, his body weary, his pride cracked open. Maybe she was right, he muttered. Upstairs, Rasheeda was on the phone again, her tone shifting from pain to calculation. "No, don't post it yet," she whispered. "Let me talk to him first. He needs to hear it from me." The person on the other end, a producer, a friend, or perhaps someone angling for a story, stayed silent, listening to a woman trying to balance heartbreak and survival, because that's what it had become, survival. Every tear now had a cost, every secret a price. Later that night, when they met again in the same room where the fight had started, there was no shouting this time, just exhaustion. Rasheeda looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. And Kirk looked back with the quiet of a man who had finally realized that every lie he'd told had been a countdown. "You ruined everything," she said softly, and her voice trembled. Not with rage but with grief. Not just us, the trust, the years, but with grief. Not just us, the trust, he muttered. Upstairs, Rasheeda was on the phone again, her tone shifting from pain to calculation. "No, don't post it yet," she whispered. "Let me talk to him first. He needs to hear it from me." The person on the other end, a producer, a friend, or perhaps someone angling for a story, stayed silent, listening to a woman trying to balance heartbreak and survival, because that's what it had become, survival. Every tear now had a cost, every secret a price. Later that night, when they met again in the same room where the fight had started, there was no shouting this time, just exhaustion. Rasheeda looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. And Kirk looked back with the quiet of a man who had finally realized that every lie he'd told had been a countdown. "You ruined everything," she said softly, and her voice trembled, not with rage but with grief. "Not just us, the trust, the years, the people who believed in what we built." He didn't argue. He couldn't. Words had no value here. They were both standing in the ruins of a love story once broadcasted as perfect. And in that silence, the sound of her breath breaking became the most honest thing between them. Meanwhile, outside their storm, the world kept moving. Blogs uploaded headlines. Hashtags started trending. Videos were clipped, edited, dissected. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone wanted a piece of the tragedy. In Atlanta, at a small studio, Michelle poured herself a drink and watched it all unfold on her phone. "Told y'all," she said to no one in particular, her reflection catching in the glass. "The truth don't stay buried forever." But even she didn't smile. There was no joy in being right, only the bitter taste of déjà vu, because every story like this, every fall from grace, was just another echo of her own. By morning, Rasheeda's team was already in crisis mode. A public statement was drafted, part apology, part damage control. Kirk wasn't mentioned by name, but everyone knew. The press would circle like vultures for weeks. But Rasheeda had made her choice. She would not hide. She would not break in public. The tears, the sleepless nights, the betrayal, those were private, sacred even. What the world would see was a woman rebuilding. What Kirk would see, every time he closed his eyes, was the moment she stopped waiting for him to change. In the final hours of that day, when the lights dimmed and the city outside turned to a blur of red and gold, Rasheeda wrote one last message to him, short, final, without bitterness. "You always said time fixes everything. I hope it fixes you." Then she blocked his number, closed her laptop, and stepped outside into the night rain. The kind that doesn't sting but cleans. In the distance, thunder rolled, soft and uncertain, like applause from a fading audience. The morning after the storm felt unreal. The air outside was heavy and wet, as if the rain had scrubbed the city clean but left its people coated in something invisible, grief, maybe, or the residue of too many secrets shared in the dark. Rasheeda stood by her window, coffee cooling in her hand, and watched the street below come alive. Cameras waited at the corner. The world had smelled blood, somewhere out there. Fans were already arguing about who betrayed whom, who lied, who suffered. But none of that noise reached her now. She had gone quiet inside, stripped of all the words she used to defend him. There was nothing left to say. Kirk had slept on the couch, not because she told him to, but because it felt wrong to be near her. The night had been long, full of half-dreams that blurred with memory every moment he could have chosen differently. He thought of the time she laughed until she cried at his first terrible joke. The night she waited for him in the rain. The mornings, she said, "You'll ruin us if you keep running from what's real." He had run anyway. Now there was no place left to go. When the phone rang that morning, it wasn't a friend or a producer. It was silent, someone breathing on the other end, then hanging up. He didn't need to check who it was. Guilt has a way of dialing you, even when no one's there. By noon, Rasheeda's post went live, a single photograph of the sky over Atlanta, gray and wide. With the caption, "Sometimes the ending is the only honest part of the story." No names, no anger, no tears, just truth, quiet and unpolished. Within minutes, it was everywhere. People called it brave, others called it shade, but she didn't read any of it. She packed a small bag, told no one where she was going, and drove. The city blurred behind her, neon turning to trees, traffic to open road. Freedom didn't feel like she thought it would. It was lonely, raw, unsteady, but it was hers. Back in the house, Kirk watched her post spread through timelines like wildfire. His phone buzzed non-stop calls from producers, texts from old friends pretending to care. He turned it off and sat alone, surrounded by the wreckage of what used to be their life. The wedding photos on the wall, the couch she picked out, the perfume still faint in the hallway. Everything looked the same, but felt like evidence. He poured himself a drink, stopped halfway, and poured it down the sink instead. For the first time in years, he didn't want to drown what he felt. He wanted to remember it. Every ache, every silence, every tear she shed because of him. Maybe pain was the only way left to honor what they had. Meanwhile, the world outside turned their story into spectacle. Talk shows debated it. Blogs analyzed her caption like scripture. "This isn't just celebrity drama," one host said. "It's what happens when loyalty becomes performance." In that, they were right. Kirk and Rasheeda had lived so long in the light of other people's cameras that they forgot how to see each other in the dark. A week later, they met again, not planned, not dramatic, just two people crossing paths in a studio hallway. She looked different, calmer. He looked smaller somehow. Not in stature but in spirit. "You doing okay?" he asked quietly. She nodded, eyes steady. Getting there. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't hate either. It was something in between, something human. For a moment, they stood in silence, listening to the muffled sounds of someone recording a new track in the next room. Life, it seemed, had already moved on. When she walked away, he didn't stop her. He didn't need to. Some stories don't end with closure. They end with distance and the quiet hope that both people might heal separately. Later that night, Rasheeda sat in her car, the city lights reflecting off her windshield like stars caught in glass. She turned on the radio. An old K. Michelle song played. The same one from years ago, the one about love that breaks but never dies. Rasheeda smiled faintly and whispered, "Guess you were right, girl." Then she started the engine and drove toward the unknown. Steady this time, unafraid. Kirk watched her taillights fade into the distance from the window of the studio, then turned back to the blank page in front of him. For the first time in his life, he wrote not lyrics for a hit, not lines to impress anyone, just truth. No defense, no excuses, just a man learning how to be honest when no one's watching. And in that fragile, quiet space between loss and redemption, both of them began something new, not together, but parallel, carrying the same unspoken lesson. Love only survives in truth. Everything else eventually burns. The city was still buzzing, but Rasheeda moved like a ghost through it, untouchable, unseen except by the few who mattered. She didn't answer her phone. She didn't check social media. The world had been loud enough for her, and now she needed quiet. The hotel she checked into had large windows, the kind that let in the city's heartbeat without letting it touch her. She stood there for hours, watching cars glide through the rain-slicked streets, listening to the occasional horn, the distant music drifting up from clubs, and felt a strange peace. It wasn't happiness, it was control. For once, she controlled how much of the chaos she let in. Kirk, on the other hand, was in full damage control mode. His team was relentless, scheduling interviews, drafting statements, and spinning the story in ways that felt more desperate than creative. Every network wanted a piece of him. Every gossip blog wanted a clip of him confessing, denying, or crying. He tried to ignore it, but the pressure was suffocating. The videos of Tamika holding the DNA envelope were replayed millions of times, each replay a fresh cut to his pride. Even his closest friends avoided him. They didn't want to be caught in the storm. Meanwhile, Tamika's presence online exploded. She didn't seek attention, but the attention came anyway. Headlines screamed that she had exposed Kirk's lies, that she had forced the truth into the open, and that she was brave enough to let the DNA results speak for themselves. In one viral clip, she smiled faintly, saying, "I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted honesty." Viewers were split. Some praised her integrity, others called her opportunistic. She didn't respond to the criticism, focusing instead on the child. Her daughter, Maya, became an innocent symbol of clarity in a world of adult deception. Rasheeda, still secluded, received a message from Carly Red. The world is watching. They think you're from Carly Red. The world is watching. They think you're breaking. Show them you're rising. She didn't reply immediately. Instead, she walked to the balcony, breathing in the cold night air. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to feel not anger, not betrayal, but clarity. The past had been stormy, the present chaotic, and the future uncertain. But she understood one truth: her life, her choices, her voice, were hers. She could let the narrative unfold without her being a pawn. Back in Atlanta, Kirk attempted a live appearance on a talk show. But the tension was palpable. The host, seasoned and merciless, leaned forward, eyes glinting. Kirk millions watched as Tamika revealed receipts, texts, and even voice recordings. How do you respond? Kirk exhaled, voice tight. I'm trying to navigate a personal matter that somehow became everyone's business. The host pressed. Personal matter. Fans are calling it betrayal, lies, even manipulation. What do you say to them? Kirk looked down. I say, I'm human. I made mistakes. Flashes went off. Social media exploded. And for the first time, Kirk felt the full weight of public judgment, raw and unfiltered. Rasheeda's phone buzzed again, not a message, but a video link from a fan. She watched in silence as footage surfaced of Kirk meeting another woman in Miami. It wasn't proof of anything, just an ambiguous interaction. But her mind filled in the gaps. The betrayal she had already endured made the shadows darker. She closed her eyes and let herself feel everything: the sadness, the anger, the exhaustion, and then she opened them and exhaled. No one could steal her power by making her feel small. She decided to respond, not publicly, but privately. She texted Kirk a single line: face your truth before it consumes you. The next morning, Tamika posted another video online, explaining in calm, measured tones what the DNA test meant and what it didn't. She addressed rumors, clarified time, and reminded viewers that the child was a human being first, not a Fans praised her composure, and the comments sections exploded with support, admiration, and, inevitably, judgment. The world was addicted to the drama, but Tamika stood firm, embodying the one thing missing from all the chaos: integrity. Meanwhile, Rasheeda made a quiet return to work, recording segments for her reality show. The cameras captured her at first wary, then focused, then commanding. Every scene she was in, every line she delivered, carried the weight of her experience. She became a study in resilience, showing audiences that pain could be channeled into strength. That betrayal didn't have to define her, and that personal dignity could outshine public scandal. Kirk's attempts to regain control continued to falter. Every interview, every post, every plea to fans seemed to feed the fire rather than quench it. His team grew frustrated, and he became increasingly isolated, realizing that fame without integrity was a cage. The very audience he had once commanded now dissected his every move, highlighting hypocrisy, exposing contradictions, and replaying Tamika's.com precise explanations for all to see. Amid all this, Rasheeda found unexpected allies. Former rivals, fans, even some critics reached out privately, acknowledging her strength. Carly Red was a constant source of counsel, guiding her through interviews, social appearances, and live streams. Rasheeda began to embrace a new persona, the woman defined by Kirk's actions, but the woman who refused to be diminished by them. She posted an inspirational message online: truth may sting, but it builds the strongest foundation. Never fear the light of honesty. As weeks passed, the storm began to subside, but its marks remained. Public attention shifted, gossip turned to speculation, and Kirk's missteps became cautionary tales rather than immediate headlines. Rasheeda, Tamika, and even Kirk navigated a new reality, one where past choices haunted, but where personal agency reclaimed center stage. Rasheeda focused on her projects, her daughter, and her mental health, using the ordeal to craft a narrative of empowerment. Tamika concentrated on her child, embracing a life free from the performative pressure of celebrity drama. Kirk left to confront his own patterns, started therapy and reflection, slowly understanding that fame without accountability was a hollow endeavor. One night, Rasheeda stood alone on her balcony again, the city lights twinkling below. She thought about Kirk, about Tamika, about all the chaos that had once felt insurmountable. A quiet smile touched her lips. She had survived. She had claimed her narrative. She had learned that the world could watch, speculate, and judge, but she alone controlled her heart, her choices, and her voice. The storm had passed, and in its wake, she had found herself. The lessons lingered. Honesty was non-negotiable. Personal boundaries were sacred, and dignity outshone spectacle. The cameras might return, The internet might continue its endless cycle of fascination, but Rasheeda had stepped out of the shadows. No longer a character in someone else's story, but the author of her own. And somewhere, in the quiet spaces between flashes and tweets, she whispered to herself, "I am enough. I always have been." The city hummed below, indifferent, yet alive. And for the first time in months, the world felt like a place she could navigate on her terms. Not a stage for drama, but a canvas for survival, growth, and quiet triumph. The end of the storm was only the beginning of her story, and she knew that whatever came next, she would face it on her own terms, with clarity, strength, and the unshakable knowledge that truth, though painful, was always the foundation upon which the strongest lives are built. The days that followed felt like a slow, deliberate unraveling of everything Kirk had tried to hold together. The public scrutiny didn't stop, it never really does, but the fire had shifted. Rasheeda, for the first time in years, felt untethered from the chaos. She spent mornings with her daughter, afternoons planning her next project, and evenings walking the quiet streets of Atlanta, headphones in, music her only companion. Each step was deliberate, a reclamation of rhythm, of autonomy, of identity. She was learning that survival wasn't about fighting every rumor or confronting every light, was about controlling what she could, letting the rest fall away. Kirk, meanwhile, was a man shadowed by his own choices. Every interview felt hollow, even when the cameras were off. His reputation haunted him. Friends who had once flocked to his side now approached cautiously, some with sympathy, some with judgment. His social media accounts were flooded with memes, clips of Tamika's composed statements, and commentary dissecting his every word. In his penthouse, alone, he watched the city's lights flicker, realizing that fame could be both a crown and a noose. He tried calling Rasheeda once, twice, a dozen times, but each time he hesitated, imagining her cold, measured voice saying, "I don't need you to explain." Tamika, quietly, became a symbol of resilience. She didn't seek validation or vengeance. She focused on Maya, creating a life where innocence wasn't sacrificed to spectacle. The child, unaware of the swirling chaos surrounding her birthright, became a beacon. Fans who had been merciless in criticism found themselves softened by the image of a mother protecting her child from the madness of celebrity. Tamika posted once a week, short updates, never long explanations, always measured, always precise. The world wanted scandal, but she offered stability. It made her more powerful than any rumor or revelation could ever have. One afternoon, Rasheeda received an unexpected message, not from a friend or a fan, but from a journalist she didn't know personally. The subject line read, "The real story beyond Kirk and Tamika." Curiosity piqued. She opened it. The email outlined rumors of other women, other payments, other secrets, all swirling in Kirk's past. Rasheeda read carefully, letting the information settle. She didn't feel shocked anymore. The revelation was a pattern she had seen for years. Instead, she felt a clarity she had never known. She could choose which battles to fight, which narratives to engage, and which ghosts to leave behind. That evening, she recorded a brief live segment for her show, unscripted. She spoke directly to the camera, to her audience, without filters or dramatics. "Life will test you in ways that feel impossible," she said. "People will betray you, lie to you, and make you question yourself. But the strength to rise, that comes from knowing your own truth, holding it, and moving forward no matter the noise." Comments flooded in. The likes and shares were secondary. The sentiment, the connection, secondary. The sentiment, the connection, was primary. People understood that this wasn't entertainment anymore, it was a lesson, raw and unadorned. Kirk, unable to ignore the momentum, tried one last public plea, a live-streamed confession. "I know I've hurt people," he said, voice strained. "I've made choices I regret." The stream crashed before he could continue. Screenshots of his expression, desperate and vulnerable, circulated immediately, further cementing the public perception. He was a man overwhelmed by his own consequences. No network could control the narrative anymore. No statement could erase the patterns exposed. He was left with reflection and isolation, lessons to learn in silence. Rasheeda, in contrast, embraced a deliberate pace. She scheduled her appearances, with intention, focusing on projects that elevated her voice rather than exposed her life. She reconnected with friends and family, creating boundaries where there had previously been none. Each day, she reminded herself that healing was not linear, but necessary. The storm that had once seemed endless now felt like a prelude, a crucible that forged resilience rather than despair. Tamika, aware of her own role in the unfolding saga, began speaking at small, private events about single parenthood, public scrutiny, and self-preservation. The attention she received was quieter but profound. Attendees described her as calm, measured, and grounded. Someone whose life had been pulled into chaos but who emerged stronger and more intentional. She refused to engage in theatrics or drama, letting the narrative unfold without manipulation. In doing so, she became an unspoken lesson to both fans and celebrities. Integrity cannot be faked. And the quietest strength often leaves the deepest impression. Weeks turned into months. Kirk's attempts at redemption were piecemeal, public perception slow to shift. Every interview, every apology, every half-hearted engagement reminded the world of what had happened. Rasheeda, Tamika, and Maya moved forward on their own terms. Rasheeda occasionally received messages from fans asking about Kirk, but she no longer replied. The past existed, but it no longer controlled her. She had reclaimed her narrative. One night, standing on the balcony of her new apartment, overlooking the quiet hum of the city, Rasheeda reflected on the journey. The betrayals, the secrets, the revelations all had been catalysts. She had been tested, publicly and privately, and had emerged with clarity, strength, and agency. The lessons were clear. Trust cautiously, value yourself relentlessly, and never allow another's actions to define your worth. The city lights shimmered like tiny truths scattered across the darkness. She inhaled deeply, exhaled, and whispered to herself, "I am enough. I always have been." And in the quiet that followed, the storm finally felt distant. The cameras no longer dictated her narrative. The public no longer owned her reactions. Rasheeda, Tamika, and even Kirk had been forced to confront their truths, and in doing so, had discovered a path forward. Though it was not easy, though it was not painless, it was authentic. And authenticity, Rasheeda realized, was worth more than any viral clip, headline, or gossip-filled segment ever could be. For Rasheeda, the next chapter wasn't about vindication or revenge. It was about living fully, fiercely, and honestly, regardless of who watched or judged. The storm had passed, but its lessons endured, and she stepped into the world with the quiet confidence of someone who had been broken, tested, and rebuilt, stronger, wiser, and unshakable. The night deepened. The city slept, and Rasheeda finally, exhaled. The story of pain, betrayal, and chaos had ended not with spectacle, but with strength. The storm was over. The aftermath had settled. The narrative belonged to her, now, and she would write it on her own terms, with dignity, purpose, and the unyielding knowledge that she could survive anything, endure anything, and rise above it all. The world had watched, judged, and speculated, but Rasheeda, at last, was free. The following weeks unfolded like a carefully edited montage, the kind reality TV producers dream of, but this time Rasheeda was the one directing the narrative. She appeared at events, not for attention, but for presence, measured, deliberate, radiant in ways that spoke more of resilience than glamour. Fans began noticing the difference immediately. She no longer reacted to rumors, she didn't post cryptic captions, and her interviews focused on her work, her daughter, and the lessons learned from a stormy past. The world was obsessed with Kirk's next move, but she had stepped off the hamster wheel of public scrutiny and found something rarer: control. Kirk, meanwhile, struggled to reclaim even a fraction of his former authority. His attempts to explain, to justify, to charm, all fell flat. The very platforms that once amplified his presence now broadcasted his missteps in endless loops. He tried appearing in new interviews, in podcasts, in panels, but each attempt reminded the public of the chaos. The DNA results, the secrecy, and the patterns of betrayal. The more he reached out, the more he seemed like a man clinging to fading relevance. Each night, he returned home to an apartment echoing with silence, confronted by the weight of decisions he could not undo. Tamika's presence, by contrast, grew quietly but powerfully. She shared glimpses of life with Maya, homework sessions, quiet walks, bedtime stories without inviting commentary or spectacle. The authenticity of her life, unadorned and steady, began to speak louder than Kirk's frantic public efforts. Fans started comparing the two women, one controlled by drama, the other mastering calm, and the comparisons overwhelmingly favored the latter. Tamika didn't engage with the debate, didn't gloat, and in doing so, she became untouchable in a way Kirk never could be. Rasheeda, sensing the subtle shifts in perception, leaned fully into her empowerment. She signed deals for new projects, negotiated terms that allowed her creative control, and used her platform to highlight resilience, honesty, and integrity. Interviews became lessons, social media posts became affirmations, and public appearances became statements. She was not defined by Kirk, by Tamika, or by scandal, but by the strength she cultivated in the aftermath. Each appearance, each segment, reinforced her narrative. She had survived a public betrayal, managed her pain with poise, and emerged as someone who could withstand scrutiny without being consumed by it. Kirk, isolated and frustrated, began seeking counsel more earnestly than ever. Therapy sessions, candid conversations with friends, and late-night self-reflection replaced the public performances that had failed him. He recognized that no apology, no explanation, no viral post could undo the damage caused by lies, secrecy, and evasiveness. Humility, accountability, and transparency, qualities he had long ignored, became essential to his personal survival. Though they came too late to recover his past image fully, Tamika, observing the ripple effects from afar, remained unwavering. She spoke publicly about boundaries, self-care, and parenting under scrutiny, turning her story into a cautionary tale for both celebrities and the public alike. Her measured approach drew a different kind of attention: respect, trust, and admiration, proving that one's power often lies not in confrontation but in deliberate, principled silence. The media, still hungry for drama, attempted to create new conflicts, but the audience's focus had shifted. Viewers no longer consumed stories of betrayal passively. They analyzed behaviors, applauded restraint, and began valuing authenticity over spectacle. Rasheeda became a case study in survival. A woman wronged, observed, and scrutinized, yet emerging with her dignity intact and her voice amplified. Her interviews carried weight, her social media posts inspired discussion, and her appearances reminded audiences that strength could be quiet, intentional, and unassailable. As the months progressed, the city itself seemed to mirror Rasheeda's journey. Atlanta's streets, once buzzing with paparazzi and whispers, settled into rhythm again. She walked those streets with an ease that came from knowing her narrative was secure. She no longer worried about the leaks, the texts, or the rumors. She had stepped into a space where her choices, her actions, and her voice were sovereign. Kirk, by contrast, continued to navigate the fallout. Some opportunities faded, others arrived too late to matter, and the constant reminder of past misdeeds made every public step precarious. Between his struggle and Rasheeda's ascent became a topic in talk shows, blogs, and fan forums. Audiences debated how accountability, timing, and self-awareness affected public perception. The lesson was clear: those who survived scandal with integrity, patience, and strategic clarity emerged not just unscathed, but stronger. Rasheeda, aware of her own transformation, began mentoring young women in the industry, sharing lessons learned from betrayal, public scrutiny, and reclaiming control. These sessions, intimate and candid, highlighted resilience as an active practice, not a passive outcome. She spoke about setting boundaries, navigating deception, and understanding that self-worth cannot be dictated by another's actions. Those who listened were inspired, noting that her guidance came not from theory but lived experience, a testament to surviving in the public eye, while maintaining inner authority. Tamika's life, quiet but intentional, continued to contrast sharply with Kirk's unraveling public persona. She prioritized motherhood, emotional clarity, and strategic disengagement from unnecessary conflict. Her influence, subtle yet undeniable, reinforced the idea that strength is measured not by spectacle but by the ability to maintain grace under scrutiny. In the shadows of this personal and public evolution, Kirk began documenting his reflections privately, writing, recording, and attempting to understand the dynamics that had led to his downfall. He realized that his prior choices, once defended as strategy or necessity, were in fact compromises of integrity. The realization was painful, humbling, and necessary. For the first time, he confronted himself without seeking the approval of fans, networks, or peers. Rasheeda, observing the landscape she had emerged from, knew that the storm had reshaped more than just public perception. It had redefined her own values. She no longer measured life by others' expectations or scrutiny. She moved deliberately, spoke intentionally, and acted with foresight. The past, while never forgotten, became a foundation for growth rather than a source of lingering anguish. And so, the narrative that began with betrayal, public scandal, and heartbreak evolved into one of empowerment, self-mastery, and integrity. Rasheeda, Tamika, and even Kirk each navigated their own path through the wreckage, discovering lessons about truth, accountability, and personal agency. The cameras may have captured moments of pain, the internet may have dissected every detail, but ultimately, the human capacity to rebuild, to reflect, and to rise proved far more compelling than the spectacle of the drama itself. Rasheeda, finally at ease, understood this. She could walk through the streets, meet fans, conduct interviews, and share her experiences without fear or hesitation. She had claimed her story, owned her truth, and embraced the future with clarity and confidence. Kirk, Tamika, and the world at large had become part of a narrative she no longer needed to defend. She simply lived it. Beautifully, deliberately, and without compromise. The storm had ended, the aftermath had been endured, and in that enduring, Rasheeda found something the cameras could never capture. Absolute, unwavering self-possession. The kind that transforms scandal into strength, betrayal into wisdom, and public scrutiny into a platform for true empowerment. The world watched, as it always does, but Rasheeda, at last, was free. And so, after months of public scrutiny, leaked messages, viral clips, and endless speculation, the story that once consumed headlines has settled into something deeper, something that goes beyond gossip or drama. Rasheeda, Tamika, and Kirk have each lived through a storm that exposed lies, secrets, and betrayals. But the lesson isn't in the scandal itself, it's in how each of them navigated it, how they responded to the truth when it could no longer be hidden. For Rasheeda, the woman at the center of it all, this was never about revenge or public validation. It was about reclaiming control over her life, her narrative, and her peace of mind. She has emerged not just unscathed but transformed. A symbol of resilience in a world where celebrity drama often overshadows human growth. What makes this story remarkable isn't the viral clips, the social media debates, or the leaked receipts. It's the way Rasheeda chose to rise above. She understood early on that no amount of public opinion could define her worth. She refused to be dragged into arguments or reactive displays of emotion that would have fueled the gossip cycle further. Instead, she focused on what truly mattered: her daughter, her career, and her mental health. She prioritized authenticity over appearance, integrity over sensationalism, and in doing so, she set an example that resonates far beyond reality TV audiences. Fans watching this unfold learned quickly that resilience isn't flashy. It's not a tweet or a viral video. It's quiet, consistent, and sometimes painfully private. Rasheeda's journey showed that strength isn't measured by how loudly you confront betrayal, but by how steadily you hold your own truth in the face of chaos. Tamika too demonstrated this principle in her own way, focusing on motherhood, maintaining boundaries, and allowing her life to speak louder than any statement ever could. The contrast between public spectacle and private integrity couldn't be more clear. The woman who reacts, amplifies, and controls narratives may capture attention, but the woman who lives intentionally commands respect. And Kirk, his story serves as a cautionary tale. No amount of charm, spin, or denial could erase patterns of dishonesty once the truth was revealed. The public response, while sometimes harsh, reflected a broader truth: accountability matters, and the world notices when actions contradict words. His journey reminds viewers that fame without integrity is hollow, and that the consequences of hidden truths are never contained. Even in the privacy of reflection, Kirk faced the hard work of understanding himself, recognizing mistakes, and seeking ways to rebuild credibility, not just publicly, but personally. As viewers, you've seen a microcosm of what life teaches all of us. Betrayal can strike anyone, but how we respond defines us. Rasheeda's response was deliberate, strong, and empowering. She didn't react impulsively, didn't engage in unnecessary conflict, and didn't let scandal steal her agency. She allowed herself to feel, to process, and then to act with intention. In doing so, she became more than a reality TV figure. She became a lesson in resilience, dignity, and self-possession. And this isn't just a story to consume and move on from. It's an invitation to reflect on your own life, the challenges you face, the betrayals you've endured, and how you choose to respond. Will you react in the heat of the moment, letting anger and emotion dictate your actions? Or will you pause, assess, and act with clarity, integrity, and purpose? Rasheeda's story shows that the second path, though harder and less immediately gratifying, leads to freedom. It leads to peace. It leads to the kind of personal growth that can't be stripped away by gossip, rumors, or public opinion. So here's what we want you to do as you leave this story behind. Think about the lessons that resonate. Consider the choices you've made when faced with betrayal or adversity. Ask yourself how you can reclaim your narrative, how you can maintain integrity when the world seems set against you, and how you can rise above circumstances that feel overwhelming. Let Rasheeda's journey remind you that you are not defined by the mistakes of others, the actions of those around you, or the noise of a world hungry for drama. You are defined by your own choices, your own courage, and your own commitment to truth. If this story has moved you, inspired you, or made you reflect on your own life, take a moment to engage. Like this video to show that you value stories of strength over spectacle. Subscribe so that you can continue to watch narratives that highlight resilience, growth, and personal empowerment. And most importantly, comment below with your thoughts. What lessons from Rasheeda's experience resonate most with you? Have you ever faced betrayal or adversity and found a way to reclaim your power? Share your story and inspire others. The community that forms here isn't about gossip, it's about learning, growing, and supporting each other through the storms life throws at us. Remember, this story isn't just entertainment, it's a reflection of life's realities, magnified through the lens of celebrity but deeply human at its core. Betrayal, secrets, and public exposure can happen to anyone, but the power to rise above them belongs to you. Use Rasheeda's example as a blueprint, not just for surviving adversity, but for thriving despite it. Stay gentle with yourself, stay wise in your choices, and recognize your value regardless of what others may do or say. The world may watch, judge, and speculate, but your narrative is yours to write, and no one can take that away. Engage, reflect, and take control because, just like Rasheeda, you have the strength to emerge stronger, wiser, and more empowered than ever before. Stay gentle, stay wise. You matter more than you know. Stay wise. You matter.